Freedom of expression is once again under assault in Nigeria after the National Broadcasting Commission banned a song by Idris Abulkareem that criticizes the performance of President Bola Tinubu. Now here's a little thing about freedom of speech. We all think we know this, but freedom of speech is absolutely vitally important. It is our right to express our opinions and ideas and to exchange information without government restriction, censorship, or legal penalties. There are, of course, grey areas, but the most important point is that free speech is a fundamental principle in democratic societies, and it is protected by constitutional legal frameworks. So how much is freedom of speech under threat in Nigeria today? I'll be joined in the studio by a top team of analysts and commentators. Also on the program, the team will also look at the financial effects of the political crisis and subsequent imposition of emergency rule in Rivers State. As the sole administrator is accused of provoking turmoil rather than peace in the state, we assess the economic impact of the long-running political conflict there. Economists are warning that as the crisis intensifies, Rivers State is losing more than 2 trillion naira annually, with somewhere between a 4 to 7% reduction in its GDP. They say that since the crisis began 2 years ago, there have been no policies to help businesses grow, and new investors in oil and gas and other sectors are not being inspired to invest. Plus, we'll round up the other key events in Nigeria in the past week. I'm Charles Enyegulu, and this is Arise Primetime. Now, as you might have heard, the Nigerian authorities have banned broadcasters from playing a song that criticizes the performance of President Bola Tinubu. The regulator, the National Broadcasting Commission, or NBC, said Idris Abulkareem's track, Tell Your Papa, was inappropriate and fell short of public decency standards. The lyrics urged President Tinubu's influential son, Seyi, to tell his father that people in Nigeria are dying because of economic hardship and insecurity. Unsurprisingly, there's been a surge in support for Mr. Abulkareem on social media. Many argue that freedom of speech, freedom of expression is or should be a basic principle in a democratic society such as Nigeria, which is why in the media, for example, we take our responsibility to promote and protect freedom of speech so seriously. Now, we all know that freedom of speech isn't absolute, and there are restrictions against hate speech, defamation, national security threats, and obscenity. But the most important point is that free speech is a fundamental principle in democratic societies and is protected by constitutional legal frameworks in Nigeria. So in that context, is there legal justification for the ban? Well, we asked the National Broadcasting Commission to send someone to come on the program tonight to tell us more about why they banned the song, but they said that no one was available. So let's dive right into it. And with me tonight are our guest commentators. Samson Itodo is the Executive Director of Yega Africa, a civil society group dedicated to the promotion of democratic governance. Dr. Taofiq is a development expert and business economist and policy analyst. And Kaka is a public policy analyst and also a development expert, and he joins us from our off-site studio. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me come to you first, Samson Itodo. Is this ban, in your assessment of Idris Abulkareem's song, Tell Your Papa, a violation of free speech? I mean, the lyrics urged President Tinubu's son, Seyi, to tell his father that people in Nigeria are dying because of economic hardship and insecurity.
Well, thanks, Charles. I think that the ban by the NBC is expected because this is not the first time that the NBC is acting in this manner. Well, one would ask the question about the legal justification for this. And it is very clear that citizens have a right to express their views. And what Idris Abdulkareem did was to amplify the concerns and the pain that Nigerians are experiencing. There's absolutely nothing he said in that song that it's not a reflection of our present reality. And all he has just done is to use music, because you use music to tell a story. You use music to communicate, your views. And it's a form of expression. And what he did was to use that form of expression, to express the concerns that Nigerians have. I dare say, Charles, I don't ask you, what is it that Idris said that many people have not said? The fact that he put it in form of music, it's really unwarranted action on the part of the NBC, because first, it doesn't compromise national security in any way. There's no obscenity in any way. There's no hate speech in any way. It's, again, when he released Jaga Jaga under Obasanjo's regime, it was the same response from the state. But I thought that the state would be more concerned with responding with some of the actions it is taking to cushion the effect of some of the economic policies that this administration has introduced, but not to ban the song. Well, thank God for the democratization of information platforms. And you can ban the song, but you can't ban it on the hearts of Nigerians. You can ban the song, but you cannot ban the pain that Nigerians currently face. So I think it's just a reflection of the reality and nothing short of that.
Thank you very much indeed, Samson. Let me come to you, Dr. Taofiq Raimi. If Nigeria is a proper democratic country, you are a member of the APC, the ruling party, and of course the government goes out of its way to say that, insist that it is a democracy and that it is keeping to the tenets of a democratic society. If it is, why can't an artist record a song that is critical of the president and which for many people accurately reflects, as Samson was saying there, what is happening in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you, Charles, and good evening to our audience everywhere across the globe. It's quite correct that we all enjoy, or we are guaranteed freedom of expression, freedom of speech within the Constitution of Nigeria as a democratic nation. However, we must also underline the fact that this freedom of speech is not, must be oriented within the context of sanity. The NBC that has slammed a ban on Idris Abdulkareem song has quoted a violation. I think part of the question we need to ask is, did NBC, I'm not representing NBC here in any way, but as an analyst, my opinion would be that let us dip below the surface to look at the issues that they have raised. They have said that this song has contravened a section of the broadcasting code, and the code they cited is section 3.1.8. Has anybody, including the press like you, Charles, have you tried to look at what does that section provide for?
As a matter of fact, we have.
Good. And the issue is that do we have to now interpret what that section says? Because when we say we have freedom, this freedom must be oriented to bring sanity to this country. Of course, he has complained. He has put it in music, just like he has said. He will not be the first to sing song, but I believe the purpose of that song should be to call the attention of the president to what all of us Nigeria have been complaining. But to begin to mention name, it's like an attack on the personality of even Seyi Tinubu, as I could say. So I want to believe that while the freedom of expression is good, every organization is guided, every practitioner within a given profession is guided by code. Like in the construction industry, you have building code. You won't say because you have freedom of expression, freedom of speech, or freedom to do things, you will not be guided by that. In finance sector, you have code. So NBC has code. So we should ask, are these artists, are they even aware of the code that guide their operation. So
Right,
if they are
okay.
aware, they should be able to live within that code. I think we should also separate emotion from the criticality of certain things that can bring incitement among the people. While the president will continue to do what he has asked that he will do based on the Renew Hope agenda, we need also to point out objectively areas that need improvement. This music should also be used to even identify areas that has been done well in order for us to have a balance.
Right. Well, I mean, the point really here is the issue of the freedom of expression. We sit in television studios, people come in, they criticize the government. Samson made the point that what is the difference because it was put in music form. I mean, people sit here, the opposition criticizes the government, they talk about the policies that are not working, people complain, people protest, people go out onto the streets. But let me come to you, Kaka. NBC said the song violated Section 318 of the Nigerian Broadcasting Code. It said it was inappropriate and fell short of public decency standards. It's not the first time that Mr. Abulkareem has fallen foul of the government. In 2004, his song Nigeria Jaga Jaga was also banned. I guess the question is whether the broadcasting code goes against the Constitution of Nigeria, which guarantees freedom of speech and expression, and whether this is a form of dictatorial censorship which violates the Constitution and which essentially misinterprets and misapplies the law.
Well, thank you, Mr. Charles, for having me again. You see, we are practicing a democratic system of government, and therefore free speech and free expressions are protected by the Constitution. And if anybody offers himself to lead either a state, local government, or the federal government, you know, there are things that come with the territory. And therefore, you know, under the Constitution, you know, citizens are, you know, expected to have free speech, even if the government doesn't want it. This is what democracy entails. And this issue of banning a song, I don't even see what's the really big deal about it, because this is just the same thing Nigerians are talking about every day, but, you know, it came in a, as my friend has said, in a form of a music. And therefore, you know, if you remember, there was a time the president himself said that we should, you know, Nigerians should not pity him. He looked for the job, he applied for the job, and he got the job. Therefore, you know, criticisms comes with the territory, and that should be expected and respected by NBC and others. Actually, if the president can say that, and overzealous, you know, surrogates of the president will go this far to ban this song. Actually, the song now is trending seriously, and Abulkareem has become more popular than before, and therefore free speech should be respected at all times.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think you made an important point which I wanted to sort of emphasize and back up, because from what we're hearing, the song is like the one that was banned in 2004. This one is becoming a huge underground hit. And it's getting a sort of perverse promotion because of the ban, which rather defeats the whole point of what the government is trying to do. Let me come to you, Samson Itodo, because you represent a very prominent civil society group. It's well known beyond Nigeria, across Africa, and indeed in many parts of the world. I mean, I wonder what your group would do in these circumstances. Do you expect that either you or some of your colleagues in the civil society space will challenge this in court?
Well, Charles, we have said it uncountable times that what we are experiencing are levels of democratic erosion. And we will continue to advocate that democratic principles need to be respected. You cannot have a constitutional democracy without Democrats. It's really crucial that we ponder deeply on this. And as civil society, we'll continue to speak. This ban, it's an assault on the rights of Idris Abulkareem. And I know that there are conversations about strategic litigation to contest this in court because, quite frankly, again, there are conditions where you derogate from certain rights, and you clearly mentioned this previously. And I don't think, based on the circumstances and the facts of this particular case, and I don't think that this particular song, defies those principles established by the Constitution. I think that we need to be careful as a country on how we claim to be practicing this democracy. If you look at these elements of fragility, they are in different parts of the country. This is fueling discontent, because how do you silence a musician who has done nothing but amplify, the concerns of citizens? And all he has said is the same president's son who said this is the best president in Nigeria's history. He's asked that same son of the president to do what? To convey the message to the president, in case the president is not listening. What I expect the state to do is to say, acknowledge the fact that the contents of this particular song are a reflection, it's a feedback that citizens are providing. All Idris have done is just amplify that cause. Again, let me make the point, you can ban the song for as much as you want, but you cannot ban the experiences that Nigerians are going through.
But let me ask you this, Samson, because, and I want to stay with you for a minute, because, I mean, we know that you are in very much in the public space, and the people see you as a sort of representative, an unacknowledged, if you like, representative of the people. I think the point that Dr. Raimi was raising was this issue of the fundamental principle of freedom of speech and the right of people in a democratic society to express themselves freely without government restriction, but matched against the fact that freedom of speech isn't absolute, and there are restrictions against, I think you pointed that out earlier, hate speech, defamation, national security, etc. And there is the broadcasting code, and there are grey areas. And so the question is, how knotty a problem is that in terms of the way that people like the NBC interpret it?
I think it needs to be clear. See, there's a reason why you have said there are three rights, fundamental rights that are critical and central to a democracy. First is the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, and the freedom of association. If you attack these three rights, or even one of them, what you get is a shrinking civic space. And that's the point that we have made consistently, that the civic space is shrinking. The Constitution is clear that yes, you exist within a community, and that community is bound by laws, that these rights are not absolute. The state can derogate those rights based on three conditions. If it contravenes or undermines national security, if it's hate speech, and then the third condition, that if it's defamation.
Yeah, obscenity as well.
None of this, based on my examination, and perhaps also for many people, that none of the content of this, meets this criteria or calls for derogation. That's my interpretation, and we can contest this in court because there is nothing he has said that is not true. Are you talking about impunity? There is impunity. In fact, I would say the contents of this song are really moderate, because we have seen worse situation within the Nigerian context. He's talked about corruption. Can we say there is no corruption in the country? He's mentioned weak institutions. He may not have used polished language like some of us will do. But what he has done is to use the language that the average man on the street understands. And so I don't think that, the decision taken by the NBC, it's in line and in tandem with the Constitution. And this is something that we can contest, because the NBC code is subservient to the Constitution.
Indeed.
Once the Constitution has guaranteed a right, any other law that runs contrary to the provisions of the Constitution, to the extent of its existence, is null and void. And that's why the supremacy of the Constitution is guaranteed under Section 1 sub 3, of the Constitution. And so these are the issues, and we just need to acknowledge the fact that in this instant case, this is a clear violation of Idris's right of speech.
And on that note, let us rest this discussion for now, but I'm sure it is one that will rise again in the days to come, and possibly weeks and so on. And I do hope that someone goes to challenge it in court, because the issue, as you mentioned, Samson, of freedom of speech is absolutely essential, that it is protected in a democracy. And you're watching Arise Primetime. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with our guest commentators, getting their take on all the key developments here in Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back to Arise Primetime, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now let's talk about the financial effects of the political crisis and subsequent imposition of emergency rule in Rivers State. As the sole administrator is accused of provoking turmoil rather than peace in the state, let's attempt to assess the economic impact of the long-running political conflict there. Economists are warning that as the crisis intensifies, Rivers State is losing more than 2 trillion naira annually, with somewhere between a 4 to 7% reduction in its GDP. They say that since the crisis began 2 years ago, there have been no policies to help businesses grow, and new investors in oil and gas and other sectors are not being inspired to invest.
I do not believe that President Tinubu asked him, when you get to Rivers State, dismantle what you find there and agitate the people of Rivers State. He is not neutral. He is working a script. He is playing out a script. And we all know what script he is playing out. But this is dangerous.
What script
the
might
point,
that be?
The script he is playing out is the script of Nyesom Wike. Because the people that are being appointed right now, as I speak to you, being removed are people that Fobra put there. The people that Ibas, is bringing in are majorly Wike's people. It doesn't take a brain surgeon, neither does it take an
Well, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is a disaster.
Let me ask you this. Is there any sign at all that the sole administrator is making any moves towards engaging in peace negotiations to resolve the impasse and restore Rivers State to some kind of democratic normality?
First of all, he does not have the ability. He has demonstrated that because he is one-sided. He does not have the ability. And quite honestly, we don't want him to play that role. I want to very quickly mention that there are people like Reverend Bishop Matthew Kaka and the retired General
Abdul Salam
Abubakar,
right,
who is recognized at least in Nigeria that politically they've been able to play the role of peacemakers every time there has been an election.
Indeed.
I think that for us in Rivers State, we will begin to have more confidence when we have people that are neutral in this manner.
That's the Rivers State human rights activist Ankyo Briggs, who appeared on this show just 24 hours ago. She wasn't really talking about the economy, which is the focus that we want to look at now, the impact of all this politics on the economy in Rivers State. And our guest commentators are still with me in the studio. Samson Itodo is the Executive Director of Yega Africa, a civil society group dedicated to the promotion of democratic governance. Dr. Taofiq Raimi is an development expert and business economist and policy analyst, and Kaka is a public policy analyst and also a development expert, and he is in our off-site studio. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Let me come to you, Dr. Raimi, because you've done some pretty in-depth research into the impact that the political crisis in Rivers State has had on the economy of the state. Tell us about your findings.
Okay, thank you very much. There are three dimensions of this study that have you reveal quite a lot that is very important, not only for Rivers State to look at, also for Nigeria and even other states that are not affected by a state of emergency yet. There is a great nexus between political instability or crisis and economic or business development in any state where it occurs. What we have found out is categorized under three, what I found out is categorized under three concepts. One is that businesses since 2023, late 2023, run through last year, 2024, and early this year, businesses have slowed down because of uncertainty in the political space. New investors are worried whether they should bring in their investment into Rivers State because they are not sure of what policies, government policies will support them. There are no clear policies, as it were, throughout last year, and now to woo investment into that state, which is very critical to Nigeria. Another dimension is that some existing businesses also are losing customers, and worse it are hospitality industry. You will recall that previously, before 2023, the last 8 years before then, when the former governor was there, His Excellency Yozon Wike, CFR, you will recall, all of us and your TV station, every one of us are quite aware of how the influx of people into that state. Now, hospitality industry has suffered greatly because new investments are not going into the state. And you know that is the bedrock of oil and gas reserve in Nigeria. Rivers State is very important to us. One, it's where we have close to 40% of the output in our oil and gas reserve being produced. Rivers State is the third busiest international airport in Nigeria. Rivers State has all the landmark in Rivers State occupied about 39% of it is very good for crop production. Rivers State has other natural resources, just like clay, white sand ocean. It also has timber. All these are not being harnessed since this crisis started. And so the unemployment rate in Rivers State is also growing. And the Rivers State is losing about 2 trillion naira per year of new investment that will have come into that state from big investors in oil and gas and in other sectors. Small businesses are also gradually suffering, and there are other businesses that have not started suffering. The impact of political instability usually occurs at three levels. One, some will be immediate. There are others that will also take like 2 years before they start manifesting. And there are those that even after the crisis has been resolved, 5 years down the line, you can't come back to it. So it's very important that what I now discover as solution is a pyramid of solution to Rivers crisis, which can be replicated to every other place where we may have this incident. We don't pray so. One, there is what I call crisis prevention, CP. Crisis prevention is when the problem has not occurred.
Yeah, but you can't prevent it now anyway.
They've missed that one.
So,
that's at the bottom.
If you could tell us fairly quickly what the solution is.
The second one is managing the crisis.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's the phase at which we are. Before the president has intervened, the sole administrator has been brought. I'm asking the sole administrator not to just work on the peace building alone, but also within these 6 months, there must be scalable, deliverable. among those that are concerned.
Okay.
Because nobody is talking of the suspended governor now.
Yeah.
They should not wait till after 6 months to say, I'm expecting that every month we should be able to say this is the progress we have made.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good point.
So,
and Dr. Raimi, I want to thank you for your very incisive assessment of the economic situation in Rivers State. I think you did quite a sterling job there. Let me come to you, Samson Itodo. I wonder what you think of not just the analysis that he's given, but also the fact of the need for the sole administrator to be there delivering peace and reconciliation, and the feeling that a lot of people seem to have, including Ankyo Briggs, who spoke earlier, that he's not doing that, and what the knock-on effect that is having on the economy of the state.
First, I think it's important to state that we shouldn't move away from the fact that the act taken by the president to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State was uncalled for. There was no provocation. It was unwarranted. And secondly, if the removal, let's say suspension of the governor and the State House of Assembly is unconstitutional, I think we need to continuously reiterate the fact that that action does not meet the constitutional test, and it is unconstitutional to remove an elected governor and State House of Assembly. Because the whole concept of sole administratorship is alien to our Constitution. And the fact that this is alien, whatever action that the gentleman actually takes, I don't think that the whole environment, for peace has been created. Because first, you have unconstitutionality. There's no way unconstitutionality will bring peace. And you clearly see some of the actions that the sole administrator has taken is a clear provocation and really unconstitutional actions. First, he talks about a budget, and then you suspend the state or reconstitute the Rivers State House of Assembly. You dissolve or you appoint sole administrators. All of these actions run foul to the Constitution. And so how do you inspire confidence on the part of the people of Rivers State? Not just Rivers State, but Nigerians, because Rivers is part of Nigeria, and every Nigerian should be concerned with this level of democratic backsliding that you see. And that's why a brilliant analysis about the economy. Why are we having this situation? Just because, one, there are individuals who have refused to respect the rule of law. There are individuals who think that they are more powerful than the state. There are individuals who have refused, to put public interest over and above their personal, parochial, and primordial interest. That is why you would continue to have some of the issues that he's talked about at the expense of public interest. And it's just sad, just listening to his analysis on how the state is suffering, the state is bleeding, just because one individual or a set of individuals have decided to hold the state hostage. So and it's just unfortunate that this is happening in the 21st century, in 2025, when other nations are thriving and are leveraging the resources that they have to advance and jumpstart their development. It's really sad.
I think it is sad, it's unfortunate, as you put it, and it's enormously demoralizing. And let me come to you, Kaka. I do apologize. You're starting to look a bit isolated in that studio. I'm used to having you in here, but that's okay. Jolly nice of you to stick with us. Of course, we don't know when all this is going to end, do we? I mean, we're told an initial period of 6 months for the state of emergency, but it could end up being longer, couldn't it? Especially if elements in the state are perceived to be restive, and I emphasize the word perceived. And today we saw the first protests against emergency rule in Rivers State.
Well, yes, indeed. Actually, what is happening is the fact that the emergency itself was declared, in the first place. You see, the president, who is a Democrat I was really surprised that, that decision was taken. But the economic implications, obviously, is huge because our, national budgets are based on estimates and expectations of revenue. And those expectations are themselves now threatened because of different interest groups that are going to be fighting this decision of the emergency itself, and vandals and pipeline, vandalism and other economic saboteurs, and you name it. And so the implication is not only to the River State itself, but actually to the nation as a whole, because we are now going to, if the crisis continue, we are going to miss, deadlines on, crude exports. We are going to miss other deadlines, economic deadlines. And then the foreign investors and even local investors are going to be shunning River State, because no serious businessman at this time will bring his money to a state where there is no economic or political certainty. And therefore, we are expecting this emergency itself to be cut short, because actually, personally speaking, I didn't expect the president to take that decision. But anyway, now that he has done, I remember during the Jonathan administration, a state of emergency was declared in the 3 northeastern states of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa without removing the governors. And the current vice president, Senator Kashim Shettima, happens to be one of them. So you can still declare a state of emergency and let the military go and handle the security aspect of the emergency itself without removing the governors. Because this is a democratic setting and people have voted for individuals to be in office, and we should not allow anybody or any group of persons, no matter how powerful they are, to be above the law or to be above the state or whatever you can call it, because that, portends danger. And I can see if this emergency continues, as you're saying, probably more than 6 months, it's very unfortunate because it shouldn't have been there in the first place. So why we should be looking at cutting it down to the 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is that we are looking at? Then we need to understand why, what are we getting? What are the derivatives that we are getting from the emergency? Let's have a timeline. Let's have, a deadline, of what are they doing? Because democratic institutions suspended in a democratic setting itself is a bad news.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And we're going to move on from this. But let me thank you again, Dr. Raimi, because, apart from the sterling work you did analyzing the economic impact of this political crisis on River State, you alerted me to it with a rather long text earlier in the day, which I plodded through, and I'm very glad you did, because I think that's a very important topic, and I think we ought to keep it on the front burner as we continue to assess developments in River State. Now let's move on. Thank you again. Now let's move on from there. Why is it that the Labour Party is still mired in a dispute over the judgment of the Supreme Court on the chairmanship of Julius Abure? Is it that the judgment was delivered without clarity, or is it that lawyers and politicians choose not to accept verdicts when it goes against them and would gladly twist and obfuscate as much as possible the language of the ruling in order to suit their dark purpose of confusing the public and hanging on to the belief that they have the right of it? Let me come to you, Samson Itodo. It's a nettlesome question, this issue of political parties that sue themselves, or politicians picking the bits of the judgment that suit them and insisting on interpreting court rulings in their own way, thereby creating lots of public confusion, not just for the people, but even for the police and agencies like the Electoral Commission, INEC. I mean, what do you make of these conflicting interpretations and the fact that they're becoming more preponderant in Nigeria?
I think this is just a manifestation of one big problem with our democracy, is that we've got a very defective political culture. And it's one where people want to secure power at all costs. It doesn't matter whether it is secured legally or illegally. And that's all you see. So whether you see weak institutions, there's just something about our political culture. And the bigger question is, why is it that people who clamor for power will undermine institutions just to perpetuate themselves in office? Why is it that people who have power would not want to leave office, but they want to retain power even when people have asked them to go? It just tells you there's something about the culture. Because this whole, whether, I don't know how you frame it, whether it's misinterpretation or application of, or jaundiced interpretation of court judgments, I would say that three institutions are responsible for this. And I prefaced my remark based on the culture. The first one, I think the courts need to take responsibility for this. And two reasons. One, when you have a court issuing conflicting judgments produce conflicting interpretations. When you have the court, especially the apex court of the land, substituting substantial justice with legal technicalities, you're going to get a lot of this. When there is that distrust and lack of confidence as resulting from judicial misconduct, you're going to get a lot of this. And that's what's really happening. So I think that the court also needs to share in the blame. And that's why we always call on our judges to rise above the occasion, every point in time, to deliver justice. The second is the political actors. And I think it is really, I wouldn't say it's unfortunate. This trend needs to be nipped in the bud. Because if the apex court of the land has spoken, and you have litigants who lose in those cases, interpreting the laws just to suit their own case, I think it calls for greater accountability.
Absolutely.
And this is where both our security agencies and the judiciary really needs to rise to the occasion.
That's a very good point. Let me come to you, Dr. Raimi. Just coming off the back of what Samson Itodo was saying there, what's the solution? I mean, we've seen these misinterpretations, let me put it in those terms, in Rivers State, in Governor Fubara versus the State Assembly. We've seen it in the PDP with the Mr. Anyanwu and the secretaryship and all the rest of it. And now we're seeing it in the Labour Party with Julius Abure versus Nenadi Usman.
Let me make a quick comment.
And as briefly as you can, because we've only got about 3 minutes left, and I want to be able to get to
Great, but it's good also for our audience to be well guided. Samson earlier, as a matter of correction or guidance, keeps saying the former governor of Rivers State was removed. He was not removed, he was suspended.
No, I did correct that. I said suspended.
So it's quite important to highlight that. And secondly,
unconstitutional.
I'm talking about...
I think the operative term is unconstitutional. Whether he was suspended or whatever,
and that is also the second point I quickly want to highlight. You see, of course, everyone is entitled to his own opinion. The Constitution of Nigeria was what our president had used to evoke that power of...
well, let's not get bogged down in that,
so it's very important.
Court, so we'll see how the court
decide. And that is the court that will finally decide, So as regards the conflicting misinterpretation of court judgment, as you are saying, my own is about solution. If you look at the presidential case that went to Supreme Court in 2023, one of the things that resolved to the general public that removed that kind of misinterpretation was televising that particular judgment day live. because
you've got about 30 seconds.
Because
I have to go
you know, that's fine.
I apologize.
So I think that is very important. One of the
Right.
solutions, because once these lawyers, you know, supporting and against, come out of the court, they brief the press and give different fashions.
Yeah.
So if that
That's
particular
an important
judgment
point.
is
Yeah.
televised live, just like the presidential election was done,
Yeah.
all of us had it. It was said in plain language. I don't know why people are saying maybe the court is
Yeah.
using
Okay.
jargon.
Well,
that
that's
is one solution.
That's
and
a
it's
very important
So
point,
our court should
and
be
I
well
appreciate
equipped.
your saying that.
Our
Let
court
me
should
go
be
to
well
you for the
equipped
final word.
technologically.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Final word, Kaka. Beyond these misinterpretations, is there a propensity in this country to simply not obey court orders, and this includes the police, the institutions of government, and this is what we're seeing transferring into these misinterpretations? You've got about a minute, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely we do, because there's so much impunity in the land. Take it from either the police, the civil servants, and Nigerians are the problem of Nigerians. They don't like rules and rules of the game. They don't like rules at all, and they don't respect the courts. And there's too much ambiguity in judgments as well. And you know, we have to sit up, because we have to have a system of government that is temporary. The National Assembly needs to be temporary, because this grabbing of power at all cost has to stop. Because if you are really coming to serve the nation, you don't have to kill people to come here. You don't have to be that desperate to be in the National Assembly. So we have to have a temporary system of government where people are, you know, the real leaders are attracted to come and serve.
Okay. On that note, and I appreciate your being pithy in your final comments, Kaka is a public policy analyst and also a development expert. Dr. Taofiq Raimi is a development expert, business economist and policy analyst. And Itodo is the executive director of Yaga Africa, a civil society group dedicated to the promotion of democratic governance. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Absolutely brilliant contributions. That's
Always a
it
delight.
for
Thank
this
you.
edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.